what got me started on this is that I thought I'm so active in the change world. I've been doing this over 30 years. And what I wanted to do was to make sure that perhaps the messages that are really working for me at senior level, and that people are starting to listen and maybe value change management a little bit more, want to support it a little bit more. I just thought, hey, it's the summer. Why don't I just spend a little bit of time providing that update for all of us? So that's my plan today, as well as sort of trying to get everybody in to the call. My credibility, if you like, for delivering this. As I said, more than 30 years in change. I've written my 10th book, comes out in 6 weeks. That's the Neuroscience for Change one. And I'm really quite proud of that. That's a brand new certificated course as well. And I'm the chief examiner for the Agile Change qualifications off the back of the Agile Change Management book, but also the neuroscience one. And I work for lots of different organisations all the time. It's why I have it sort of floating on this piece here about all the different organisations I work for, because it's a constant thing. So I thought the best thing we can do, because I do want to try and make this as interactive as possible, is I'd like to get to know you guys a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run two short polls. I want to get to know you, but I also think it's something about you knowing who else is on the call, because I think sometimes that helps us understand what's going on. So if I can just sort of get the poll running. There's a couple here. I'm afraid the people who are waiting in the waiting room. So first of all, the first role is your role. And I think the thing to note about this is that I haven't done your job title. Because in change there's such a wide range of job titles. This is multiple choice, so add in as many of these things that apply to you, but the whole point of this is just getting to get a flavor for well, what is it that you do. Job titles in the world of change management, I just don't think get us anywhere. We've got a very confused picture. You're all nodding, so you know exactly what I mean. I've got about 5 different titles depending on which program I'm working on, from director of transformation. I'm also head of transition. So transition's popped up as a word these days. And adoption is another one. So sometimes it's change. You are in a special group, actually, because I did go looking for you. I have not made this a public event. It was invitation only. And I've got 25,000 connections in LinkedIn. And I basically did lots of searches to find who I think are the most relevant people for this event. So I hope I'm getting it right. You're all having a chance to have your say. So I will end the poll so I can share results in just 1 minute. So if you've got one last thing to click it now so that everybody else can see what's going on in the world. Let's end that poll and see. Let me share the results. Hopefully you're seeing the results on your screen. Thumbs up if you are. Never know what's going on behind the scene. Good, there we go. Right, so nearly 8 in 10 of you are responsible for the approach, the methods and the tools used in your organisation. Half of you are leading a team of change professionals. Another half of, just under half of you, are involved in the portfolio. Interestingly, only 2 in 10 are commissioning or providing change training for the whole of your organisation. We'll talk about that as part of capability building. And we've got 4 in 10 of you here on project and programme delivery. Other, do feel free to put in the chat if you were an other. Do let us know what that's all about, because again, it just builds that richer picture of what it is we're doing in change. You joined me as a community member, I think, more than anything today, so that we can sort of have a little look at what's going on. If I can get back now. The other poll I wanted to launch was something that keeps coming up in the change capability community that I run. We run free networking events every month. We're coming back in September after the summer break. I will show you the links to all these resources at the end of this presentation. But it's very interesting about what's our, who do we report to, and therefore how strong a voice do we have. So have a little look at this poll and I get a few more people into the event. Love to hear your views on this. This is a one choice only, seeing where it's going. Yeah. And I keep running this poll in all sorts of events, so that we can build up that picture. I'll do some metadata when I get a chance to review things over the summer break and have a look. Yeah, there we go. Right. Okay, so what's it looking like? Yeah, I'll give you one more minute. I've just got a few more people still coming into this event, but yeah, have another minute and just click on there. Right, okay, I'm going to get ready to share the results then. So everybody happy? I'm going to share these. Very interesting picture building up here. These are the results then. 5% of you are board members, a third of you reporting to a board member, useful. But then we've got sort of just under a third reporting to a person who reports to a board member, so one step removed. And then what we've got is we've got more layers, so over a third. So again, I think it just shows we've got a lot of work to do, I think, in trying to get and raise what's going on in terms of change management. But I thought that was a sort of helpful sort of thing to do. So hopefully it stopped sharing the results. I hope so. Did it stop sharing the results? Yeah, it's good. Right. You never know what's going on with this world. Okay, thank you very much. And those putting your things in the chat. So I've got somebody who's training as a change coach. They've just finished as a change lead and doing some assurance work. And also mentioning that word product owner for project and program management and business intelligence tools. So some very interesting comments in there. So welcome to everybody. Right, let's have a think then. What are we going to do? I'm going to try and cover as much as possible in a short amount of time. And it does require you to have your say starting in the chat. I just thought I'd leave it open for you to put things in the chat, but I would be very interested if you just want to put in what your biggest challenge is. In a moment, I'm going to make some suggestions of what I'm seeing across the piece, but this is an opportunity for you to share with others the thing that is your biggest blocker to getting change done in your organization right now. So that's it's always a good idea with any of these presentations to start with trying to work out what are our blockers, what our challenges, what our problem is. Get to know the problem basically. What I'm then going to do and put that in the context of the top results from the Capability for Change survey. So global survey, if you haven't had a chance to have your say, it opens again in September, mid-September, and I'll share the links to that as well. So you can register for that. And of course, what you get is the report, the anonymized data and the commentary. So it's always useful to have that in place. I'm going to look at strategic perspective. These are key messages that are landing. I'm finding they land in the boardroom. I wanted you to have a chance to have a look at them. I mentioned in my invitation, we have a glass ceiling and we're not breaking through it. I want to give us the best chance for doing that. And if I get a chance, I'll also just touch on a behavioural change model for building the capability for change and get you thinking about what your next steps are. So that's my plan. If I have a look now, I put up a few key things about, what are the key challenges for change. I'm seeing here, if I just go back to the start of the chat and run it through, I'm starting to see things like people understanding the value of change management. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? Lack of sponsor support, executive board maybe not getting a clear strategy on whether to go for transformational system upgrade. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. Too much change and lack of prioritization coming together a lot. Time, change, saturation. Yeah, I really like that phrase. I've been using it recently rather than change fatigue, actually, because I think that fatigue implies that somebody is tired. Saturation implies that the organization is saturating them. I think that is a helpful way of sort of maybe creating a bit of psychological safety, that people don't feel blamed because they're struggling to cope with the overwhelming volume of change. Change managers being seen as junior and struggling to influence at leadership level, which is why we did that quiz, to be honest, and to see where we are. Again, too much change going on, business time, investment for events, comms and training. People just don't have it. Delivery at all costs. Yeah, absolutely. So no time to embed the changes is what I've put up on here. So very useful. Thank you for sharing that, because I think it is important that we sort of start to, there's no time for adoption. We're not embedding changes. And I think the ones Grace has just put there, change not seen as a strategic tool to unlock profitability, seen as fluffy. I'm going to come to that in just a moment. I have a slide for that I think is going to be quite important. So clearly we have an issue. On the volume of change is too high. Obviously, to pull these presentations together, I research a lot. A couple of things that caught my eye when I was looking at all the global CEO surveys, because we have to go to the top and see where change is coming from. Gartner have put out in a recent survey that the top two strategy pieces, the focal points, are technology and business resilience agility. So there's a lot going on in terms of building the business resilience and agility. And I don't know about you, but I was in the City of London on Friday when Microsoft was having its meltdown, and I was seeing the winners and the losers right in front of me, the people who were absolutely losing the plot and those that could actually cope. So resilience comes back. Something that was coming out of the IBM survey, 43% of the CEOs they surveyed said they'll increase the tempo of their organization's transformational change in 2024, compared to just 19% that expect to slow down. I put in the invitation even more thoughts about that. Gartner's piece about the average employee in sort of 2016 was exposed to two enterprise-wide change initiatives. 8 years later, that has increased fivefold. So 10 enterprise-wide change initiatives affecting people simultaneously. We know that individuals are not dealing with one particular change and they're being spread too thin. We know that. Something that really caught my attention, though, was about the impact of AI, particularly. IBM's survey of CEOs said 35% of CEOs felt that their workforce are going to need retraining and reskilling over the next 3 years. That's up from 6%. So that's a 29% jump. PwC, across the EU CEOs that they surveyed, 66% of them think their workforce need to be upskilled because of generative AI. Why it caught my attention is we all know that any kind of upskilling is a massive, significant change, an emotional change. It's a cultural shift for many organizations. So we already know that there's even more change coming down the pipe. But those statistics definitely caught my attention. This came out of the Global Capability for Change survey, and this again caught my attention. It's something that Grace mentioned in the chat about perhaps change not being valued for what it can do for an organization. I just thought it was interesting that what we're saying is, how do we measure the success of change? 3/4 of respondents, who are heads of change management, heads of transformation around the world, are saying, well, actually, we measure our success by we've delivered the benefits set out in the business case. And 3/4 also say we measure it by people adopting the new ways of working. And I'm looking at that going, well, surely it should be the outcome that we achieve, not almost what we've achieved in structurally. So yes, we've got people adopting the new ways of working, but so what? So I think there's a couple of ones in here that they're down a level. Organization is more productive or successful, and customer or staff satisfaction. They are both outcomes of change. And I think this is just a reminder. We know it, but it's just a reminder. We have to start talking much more about the result of what we do, the outcome of all of our efforts, and not talk about how busy we are, what we've been doing, helping people adopt new ways of working. Surely that's a given. That's what we do. We help people transition to change from one way of working to another. My hands can't help but do the transition curve. It must be 30 years of doing this that makes me do that. But that was something that I thought caught my eye in terms of, we're doing a masterclass about the strategic value of change management, and we're just not putting up enough in front of people of what that value is. Rena's raising the point, how many organizations actually measure the benefits of change? Well, Rena, I have a slide for you in just a moment, and it will not blow your socks off, because frankly, I think you know the answer. So these are some stats from the Global Capability for Change survey that, again, catch my eye on a more strategic level. First of all, I think that whole piece about change saturation, less than half of us are assessing all the initiatives for interdependencies. So there is, I've just had a big government department online telling me they are in chaos because they've got change after change after change. Nothing's linking to anything else. And of course, everybody thinks they're going off at tangents, which from a neuroscientific point of view just means that the brain is going to go, nope, I'm going to wait for more certainty before I get involved. So as soon as we do not create a cohesive picture of change, we create an inbuilt resistance to change because people's brains are going, this doesn't seem to flow, this looks dangerous, I probably ought to sort of wait for more information. And Rena, there we go. 4 in 10 always measure the benefits achieved from the change. I've got a whole masterclass now on how do we move from sort of the implicit, oh, people are feeling better, people feel more confident, this is a more intuitive process, and how we take those sort of indicators that people are happier to more explicit measures of benefits around revenue up, cost down, improve reputation, things that at the board people really care about. So I do find that a lot of my work these days is in for change professionals is actually upskilling them in how do they put across the strategic benefits of what they've achieved, their outcomes, and by learning that, how can they work out how to do it at the start of the initiative, what they should be capturing so that they've actually got that data that they can share at the end. I want to see that figure increase, basically. Here, again, saturation, the time for change is a big issue. They all came out as 4 out of 10, which is, not brilliant. Nothing here is above 50%, which is horrifying. So we're not looking at the cumulative workload of multiple changes. Just had somebody on from a major defence contractor saying, do you know tools that will help us look at the cumulative impact of change? And I depressingly wrote back to him and said, actually, a lot of my clients do it for themselves with complex spreadsheets, but he's going to put it in the change capability community as a chat. So if you do know any answers to that, please put that in the LinkedIn group chat. He will definitely benefit from that. 4 out of 10 say our level of change is manageable, but in one-to-one workshops, when I'm digging under the surface, it usually falls to about a quarter. Same with people have time to adopt new ways of working with an organization recently where it was actually 10% of them said we've got the time. The other 90% said I can't even remember what the changes were, let alone how I'm going to embed them. I've got so much else going on. There's a lot of nodding now. I see Sam going, thank you. Your body language always helps me, guys. I have your photos up on the screen so I can sort of work out what's happening. We develop change management skills in our people. About half skills for change management are known and respected, about half. Well, how can you develop the skills, or why would people be willing to develop the skills if we haven't argued why they're valuable? And I think that goes to that middle one. Senior leaders are held accountable for building change management skills. Oh, no, they're not. I think that is the issue, that there's no sort of, maybe this is something valuable. Talking to the big government department this morning, one of the things we were sort of saying is how do we get this idea that the capability for change is strategically important, and it should be seen as any other sort of leadership or management development that we do, and we do lots. So this is the argument I'm now going to make. I'm going to take us into that more strategic piece. If we're happy with that, I'll proceed. Just keeping an eye on the chat at the same time as well. Yeah, there's lots of comments. So I'm glad you're sharing stuff in the chat because I think everybody's getting the benefit out of this. yes, change saturation is more regular now. I think it's Carol's put in there, she thinks it's a result of a lot of the digital transformation. I would also say, and I am speaking as the woman who wrote the Agile Change Management Handbook, that an agile approach is also part of this, because I now run programs that, in a more waterfall way, we would gather all the requirements, create this sort of giant Gantt chart, wouldn't we? And I would work over a 2-3 year period when we would deliver the complete solution. And of course, I don't anymore. Every 4 or 5 months, we're launching some significant shift in capability. So I'm constantly leading more change in the organization. And if my program's doing that and lots of other programs are doing that, I think that's part of that very high volume of change that we are seeing within the organization. Yeah, Rena's sort of saying it's difficult upskilling when you have managers who think they can do change and don't need additional support. I totally get that. That's why I'm going to make a more strategic argument for the upskilling and the building of capability. So I'll get on to that. Resource gaps increasing. Some of you, I don't know who's on the call exactly, but some people came to a face-to-face workshop I ran in London before Christmas. And the joke around the table, and there were very large organisations, global organisations, and smaller players around the table. But the joke was the average change management central function had 4 people in it. It didn't seem to matter how big the organisation. Calling in consultancies to boost up the numbers, absolutely. But pretty much there is a stability to the number of people we call on at a specialist level. But the volume of change keeps increasing. And my other concern is that my resource pool is those impacted by change. We could call them change champions, change agents, whatever. But actually, it's getting smaller. The reason is they're being spread across more changes. So I have a deep concern. I only have one success story to share, which is a global insurance company who realized that maybe the capability that early adopters, people who are experienced subject matter experts from the business, are vital to the change effort. But actually, they don't need to be at the top of their experience level. They don't have to be the same go-to people every time. And they have me building something, forgive the name because I've never really agreed with it, the change agent breeding program. Yeah, exactly, Myra. You can see why I don't advertise that very often. But that's exactly what they were doing, was they were developing that pool of resources. Yeah, 80 project managers and 4 change managers. There we go, Meta. Exactly my point. That's exactly what I've said around the table before Christmas. I'm glad to see I'm not, it's still the same. There's something stable about that. So we've got work to do. So let's see how we can do that work. Well, I think something that is really landing at senior level now. I used to do lots of sponsor workshops, where we're sort of talking about the skills to sponsor a change initiative. I've changed my tune over the last couple of years because of the very high volume of change. I'm now talking to senior leaders much more about transforming organizations, that actually what they are doing is they are leading a transforming organization, not leading a transformation. Wow. We know from a neuroscientific point of view, language matters, words matter, but this shift is making a huge difference. Now, I've put in a couple of boxes in here to represent what a transforming organization actually is: organizational agility and a culture of innovation. I didn't pull these out of the air. I pulled these out of, again, metadata from across a huge range of CEO surveys in 2024. And this is if you like, the wider strategic objectives of CEOs for their organizations. They want agility. And I don't mean agile methods. I mean genuine flexibility, fleet of foot, rapid to market agility. And they want a culture of innovation and ideas, because they know that to stand still means ultimate death of their organization. So actually saying to them, well, this is what you want. We know that's what you want. And effectively, what you're developing there is a transforming organization. And then just to go back to that point I made about we must talk much more strategically about what change can do for an organization. We sort of say, well, if you have that transforming organization, what does it do for you? It gives you that competitive advantage. It gives you the new markets, which ultimately leads us to the thing in the boardroom we should always be talking about, because that's what they care about, which is revenue. Revenue up, cost down, revenue. If you're in the public sector, maybe sometimes the third sector, it's going to be productivity up, cost down, but it's still the same thing. And then, of course, a positive reputation, whether that's a good global citizen, yeah, whether it's sustainability, net zero, but there's something around the positivity of who we are and what we do as a core objective. So I put that frame up and people are going, yes, that's exactly it. That's what we do. The impact and the results are sort of, yes, that is the agenda in the boardroom. And having set the transforming organization in the context of this, they're going, oh, this is really useful. So that is maybe a point to start talking about. Instead of talking about transformation or even change, start talking about being a transforming organization. I'm old enough to remember when we got excited about 2-3 decades ago about being a learning organization. And so many of my clients want to be a learning organization. Well, it's the same thing. I've just updated it and saying, to be honest, transforming organization. I tell you what, that phrase lands. I wish I'd copyrighted it. Why is it so interesting? Because I think that when we're talking about the impact, that competitive advantage, new markets, you will find that senior leaders, of course, their performance management is directly tied to this. This is what they are there for. So, of course, there's a natural pull. Okay, yes, you're right. We need to look past an individual transformation because there isn't one transformation happening one at a time. We need to look past that into being a transforming organization and having the capability for that, because I will achieve my KPIs. So there's a personal gain there. And then, of course, we look into the results for the organization, and that strategic success is the organizational gain. So if they're not feeling selfish that morning, yet to find one that isn't, but if they're not feeling selfish, then they will still get benefit from this when we're talking about strategic success. But let's be honest, the brain will always be what's in it for me. So I think putting this up is helpful. So I then build on this message and I talk about the transforming organization again. And I talk about the fact that that is made up of both. You have to have some kind of, I sometimes talk about formality, I talk about structure. But what I'm talking about here ultimately is I'm talking about there is some kind of process that backs it all up. The frameworks and life cycles and the techniques and toolkit. Although I think from the chat, we all know the same thing. Too often this is driven around the project and program management and not enough around behavioral change. But it is, so that's something we can improve. We can definitely get that. But I'm not going to talk about that today because the other part is really missing. And there's a couple of points I want to make at this moment. When it comes to the people side of things, I think what we have to think about is that we need to build the skills for coping with change. Somebody asked me this morning about resilience, and I said, absolutely. Understanding these kinds of skills and this ability to work in terms of change, having those skills gives you that sort of innate resilience. And then the other thing I want to put, and my colleagues and I have spent a lot of time debating what the word capability means and why we're using capability and not skill, is because it's a combination of both skills and the confidence to use those skills that give an individual their capability. Some of you who know me know I hate driving. I have all the skills to drive. I've had a clean driver's license for over 30 years, but because I've got very little sort of spatial awareness, I loathe driving into a new city or thinking, I'm always thinking ahead, where am I going to park and get sort of, oh, and it's because I will try to avoid driving, although I have the skills, because I don't have that much confidence. It's the same, unfortunately, when I'm in the kitchen. I kind of have all the recipe books and I watch all the pictures, but all the women on the TV teaching me how to cook. But I don't really have the confidence. Apparently, I have mastered the art of birch yet frozen. So capability is both a skill with that confidence to use it. And that, I think, putting that on the agenda, again, I'm trying to keep simple messages here so we can land these messages and get them on the agenda. And that means, to be a transforming organization, for any transformation, we've got to be talking about both the achievement of what we set out to do, plus the experience of it. So here is the next thinking, that this goes down a storm because suddenly the penny starts to drop. So let me explain this. I start with my senior leaders talking about what a successful change is. And I say to them, it is both delivering on the benefits. You're supposed to have got this in on time, on budget, and it's supposed to be working, and people are supposed to be using it. Absolutely. There should be some kind of benefits out of what you've achieved. But if you do that to the exclusion of the experience that people have during the change, you will run into problems. The experience of change is people feeling valued and respected, not feeling sort of jerked about, not feeling that their voice isn't heard. If they have a positive experience, if they're able to collaborate, if they are asked to, given the opportunity to volunteer in a way that makes sense to them, I'm talking about intrinsic motivation, because that's always going to be a sense of purpose and engagement, autonomy. If they have that, then what we end up with is they get a chance to build their skills and build their confidence. And there's a prevailing level of sort of optimism, because people feel that instead of change being done to them, there's an overarching experience, probably around the growth mindset, the opportunity to grow, to develop. And there's that underlying empowerment. And so that is what leads you to that transforming organization. Now, when this message really starts to land is when I've always talked to my senior leaders and said, you have got to sponsor change actively. And when I do my masterclasses with them, I've always included this piece around, don't just sponsor the creation of the aircraft, you've also got to sponsor the creation of the runway. So in other words, we have to build the ways of working as well as building the new system or the new processes or the new operating model or the new structure, whatever. So that's always been there. What I'm now saying over the last couple of years, which I think is really landing, is the recognition that, again, you're not sponsoring just one change, you're sponsoring multiple changes. So back to this transforming organization. So I asked this question: why would you ever shoot yourself in the foot? Why would you drive through a change that created such a negative experience? Because this isn't the only change that you're doing. And so as soon as you create that negative experience, you are going to be the one paying that price. So I talked to them about, if we fail to create this positive experience, what happens? And what happens is we end up with failed change. We end up with cynicism, organizational cynicism. We know we're all suffering from it. People don't believe that the changes are going to happen, or they don't believe that the changes will be useful. They don't believe that their input is valuable or wanted. And so there's a lot of cynicism, there's a lot of distrust. And of course, with that, that's going to have an impact on every change that's happening. So instead of a transforming organization, actually what you're leading is a stagnant one. There's bureaucracy and there's few ideas. People are so distrustful that they will hold on to their existing process come what may, even if it's a failed process. That bureaucratic, no, the book says no, the computer says no, we're going to do it this way. We're not open to new ideas. We're not flexible. We're not agile, because we're cynical, we're distrustful, we're fearful. So this is what happens. And I say to them, if you drive through a change you have the achievement, but you also have a very bad experience. People have an appalling experience. Well, the obvious stuff is going to happen. They have a poor experience. Therefore, they're going to the best of their ability, ignore the next change and keep their heads down. That means there's going to be slower change, which means there's going to be less progress, which means there's going to be low motivation, which means there's going to be a poor experience. And therefore, you've shot yourself in the foot, because the next change that you're involved in, and the one after that, it's going to go slower, and it's going to be a lot harder for you to achieve the achievement, if you like. So, in other words, they're going to, if you drive one change through, you're probably not going to have the support to do the next one. So you'll end up driving that one through, which means you'll end up driving the next one through. And it becomes a vicious circle that leads you back to this stagnant organization. If you think I'm talking sense, put something in the chat, put your fingers up or hands up if you're happy. Just see if these messages, I'm very interested if these messages are landing with you. Yeah. This more strategic picture, yeah. Okay, I'm going to start to see some clapping going on. Yeah, helpful. Because I think I'm trying to get away from the prevailing thing I hear from us as our community is what we're doing and all the activities we do. Everything I'm trying to do now is take things up a level. And I think as soon as you start talking about the transforming organization, you end up making this argument around we're actually dealing with enterprise level change, because we're talking about a much higher volume of change. Is that making sense to everybody? Yeah. Yes, driving can be seen as forcing others. You're absolutely, yeah. I think that the transforming organization, I've tried out a few different things, but it's definitely resonating with people, because now I'm putting you lead a transforming organization. If I put that on the table, people are taking a lot more notice of it. And they're going, yeah, actually that fits with what they feel, because it's a way of capturing very high volumes of change, all the things that we talked about, going, yeah, this is exactly what people's experience is. And again, it's always about making the argument why somebody should care. So I sort of further develop that argument. And I further develop that argument by making sure that, you know, we're talking here. I'm going to let the dog in for a moment. This is the joy of working from home, isn't it? She barks so long and so hard. I thought after 10 minutes, I'm going to have to let her in. She's going to start banging the door down. I want to talk about building individual capability. And so to do that, I want to sort of take it back to the transforming idea. So individual confidence, if people do have that confidence, there will be greater participation, builds the resource pool for actually getting change done. Individuals, because they're feeling confident, they have the skills, means that they will make progress, which off the back of their participation. So there's a good news story for an individual. We don't always care at that lower level for individuals. So the thing is, though, that collective individual piece for their team leads to team momentum for change, which leads to team progress and achievement. Of course, we take that up a level, it leads to department or division progress and achievement, which ultimately takes us to the transforming organization. So there's something in here about it's really important that we do this. What I thought I'd do is I thought I'd quickly show you something that other organizations are starting to use from me, which is about how we actually make this happen. So if I can share my screen, what you're going to find is that I'm going to go to, so I'm sharing my screen now. And hopefully I can show you, this is a platform that I run, and I'm very honest and I'm very equal in life. There are other platforms out there in the world, so I'm not the only one to do this, but this is something where I've put a whole load of techniques that are angled at individuals who want a little bit of help and just want to know, for example, here, breaking work into, I love the way we talk bite-sized pieces, finding key dates for the plans. There's lots of techniques in there that people can use. But crucially, this has been my big learning point as well. If we're talking about building capability in individuals who do not want to be change professionals, they are the head of marketing. They might be a finance expert. They could be somebody whose day job is to run a team who are processing banking transactions, insurance transactions, who are selling new drugs to hospitals in pharmaceutical companies. But they are constantly being challenged to do their job and change their job. because that I think is the new reality of working in a high volume change, a transforming organization, is that everybody actually has two main themes to their job: do the job and change their job. So we have to upskill them in this. And the thing that I'm really interested in is that people don't know what kind of training or capability building they need in change, because this is not their day job. And yeah, we can give them formal training courses, but that tends to be done to them. Learning and development put them on those things. I'm not saying they're not a good thing. I think they're very important, but it's about somebody deciding what it is they need to know and therefore putting them on a course to teach them that. I've put an AI search on here because I think sometimes, as somebody who's trying to maybe mobilize their own team for change, I need some help. So, for example, how help me run a workshop. I've no idea what I'll get out of this, but I like being dangerous. So what I was able to do was put into that AI search my experience. I wasn't talking about, well, what course I need. I don't know what course I need. I just need some help. And here we have a whole load of very short neuro hacks. Now, in our world, we know how to run a workshop, right? But when we are building change agent networks and we're trying to cascade out those skills to make them feel confident, so give them the help, like workshop timings, workshop activities, workshop structure. Give them those little things so they can work it out for themselves. And I make sure, by the way, that if I just click on any one of these, there's the video, which I'm not going to play if you don't need to hear me in stereo. But also there's lots of downloads that people can access. So we're really helping them be able to sort of stand on their own 2 feet. So give them the skills and the confidence. They can come back and watch this video as often as they like. Then they have that sort of confidence to get on and do things. And we have started to build out, and this is where I think we as a change profession are going, we have started to build out that wider organizational capability. So I think we have to win the argument at senior management level that this is something that we have to get done. But while that argument rages, I think at a very practical level as a change professional, what I'm doing is, well, I've got to build a network of people who are going to actually take this change to their colleagues and their peer groups. I am therefore building a change agent or change champion network. I'm going to make sure that I upskill them. And I'm going to do it not by hiking everybody off to 2, 3, 4 day change courses at the start of the assignment, and then that's the only help that they get. I have a network at the moment of 65 change agents. It's hard enough to communicate with all of them. You know that, right? But I certainly, by training them once and then leaving them to their own devices, doesn't feel like I've actually given them the support which builds their own confidence and capability. But at the same time, I can't be on call all the time with little answers. So having this kind of facility means that they themselves can, it is about sort of self-service. It is about empowering people to be able to look after themselves. So this is one of the things that I'm seeing. I was in an organization last week who know of several other tools. They're taking mine, which is nice, but it just shows you there's quite a few of these on the market now, because it is, I think, a recognition that we need to give people the how to do things. And this is the difference for me, I think. The other thing is these are all practical techniques, how you do something, not what you should be doing. Because there's a lot of change management training courses out there that tell people what they should be doing. But if they don't want to be a change manager, and they just want to know how to do something in the moment, how are we supporting them with that in the moment learning? And the background for this for me was during lockdown, when I was all alone looking after my elderly father, who had turned 90 last week. So I'm obviously doing something right. But doing things like, there was one time when I thought, I've only got a charcoal barbecue. I can't go out and buy a barbecue. We're not allowed out to the shops. Right, okay, how do you light a charcoal barbecue? And I watched lots of videos to learn how to do it. and stopped the videos and watched it again. Same with how to color my hair, how to put oil in my car. And it's just in the moment, I knew my problem. I didn't know what the solution was. And that, I think, is something we need to, as a theme, a running theme that we should be having a look at. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. I'm going to return now to my slides. Tell me if you can see my slides. Yes, good, good, good. You know, when you make the transition, you're never quite sure. Couple of things. I know I'm fitting lots in, but I wanted to because I think give a chance to lots of food for thought. That off the back of what I've just said, one of the things I do a lot of work on is how do we build the behavior change? So having some kind of process, we do this for all of our changes. So all I've done is sort of taken a sort of behavior change approach and started to apply it to how do I build out the skills for people to be able to lead change. And by the way, one of the things I've really noticed is that that kind of platform with all the neuro hacks on there, for example, really fantastic resource, but it's not mandated. It's not a forced change. So if I want you to learn a new CRM or a new finance system, you can't do your job without getting the hang of that. Whereas here, what we find is that there are two use cases, really. One is that people in the moment need help, but they've got to remember that that platform exists. And the second thing is that they want to build their career and their skill base. And these are all incredibly relevant skills. I was looking back at the World Economic Forum and the new jobs for 2030 and how much change is taking place and thought, good grief, they put that out there in 2020. Anything before November 2022, when ChatGPT was brought to the market, is questionable now, I think, in terms of the amount of change that's happening in organizations. You remember when I was writing the Neuroscience for Change book, I said very clearly to the publishers, we're going to be very careful about any research we use on organizational structures and how we work that was prior to the pandemic, because we've made a massive shift in hybrid working. I think now you can also draw a line. So I can certainly draw a line from around about 2021, 2022 around hybrid working, and now November 2022 for the launch of ChatGPT and the opening of AI to the masses. So I'm thinking about how we build behavioral change in this world when people don't have much time. So clearly there's an environment there which looks at the traditional levers for change. Putting in a life cycle which enables people to think about how might they do this. So something which it moves through the tell, the sell, and then nudging, which is what I think we're looking at with this, because it's about encouragement and it's about empowerment. So thinking about the tell is, you know, we have to make the argument at the individual level and not just at the senior level for why do you want to build a capability for change? And a lot of my arguments are about resilience. They are about stress reduction, because somebody stressed at work means they're stressed at home, which means they're stressed in their community. It's not good for the world. Building on intrinsic motivation. Yes, there can always be extrinsic motivators that are, you know, procedural, emotional, congratulations, but we have to enable people autonomy, self-choice, which is where that AI search comes in, because people can say, well, this is the thing that matters to me right now. Therefore, this is what I want a short video on, not what I'm being told. And then learn how to work differently. We obviously have to explain, we have to train, but then nudge. But also we need to think about things like mentoring and group work. We need discover activities in there that people, it creates the desire for them to learn more, as well as the mechanics of things like booking in a bit of training through an ICS message into their calendar or text messages. You know, if my hairdresser can remind me to go out and see her at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, we should be able to remind people that they've booked in 15 minutes of a bit of upskilling on a Friday morning. The practice stuff, I think, again, mentoring, group work, but also gamification. I was talking to this government department earlier this morning, and they were talking about making work more fun. And I said, as far as the brain is concerned, fun means dopamine. Dopamine is that chemical in the brain that makes us feel like we've accomplished something and we've got some energy and momentum from that. So I said, if you answer a quiz, oh, I've done so well, the answer right, you get those little dopamine hits all the time. If you get points, if you get digital badges, the entire gaming industry is based on this. Anytime you play a game on your phone from now on, just look at all those points that are actually creating that dopamine hit in the brain, which makes it very sticky. It makes us want to come back time and time again. So something we should be thinking about in terms of this. We want to build individual capability. We need to encourage people to do that. And also, of course, with the celebration, we need a reward strategy. And so the strategy is something we do at the beginning to make sure we've got the budget for any rewards that we want to put in towards the end. But I think this gives us that overarching behavior change piece. So I'm just going to go back to the chat, or anybody puts a question or a comment in there that I will answer. You know, I think you're right about organizational priorities and the challenge around training that we have, and that people just they can barely find the time to do their day job. So how on earth are they ever going to get to the actual training? So I think it is about making things very, very tiny, the bite-sized pieces, and giving people something fun with a little video, with the mechanisms for them to be able to do things, I think is part of that behavior change. Yeah. So those are the sorts of things thinking about. And I know I always try to finish at 5:02 so that people can genuinely go to another event, because I know there's meetings, there's all sorts of things on. So I just thought I'd put next steps in here. I think use the recording. So you're going to get the recording. I'm also going to share with you an outline of this kind of event that I run for senior leaders. So I take a lot of these messages and put this across for senior leaders, and you can get me to do that for any of yours. I do it over sometimes 1 hour up to 3 hours. Obviously, the more time I get, the more activities they can take part in. This is just a good run through of how information I could get across in an hour. And of course, they stop and quiz me, and it can be quite a good discussion. But the longer we get, the more activities we can do. So I will definitely send that outline out to you so you can have a look at it. I think, bear in mind that I selected you to come here. I invited you because I thought it's really important for you to have that opportunity. So continue the conversation. Do sign up for the Capability for Change survey, and do join the Change Capability community, because you'll be amongst your peer group. And finally, happy to give you more of a demonstration of the platform itself, and to talk more about behavioural change in a sort of more of a one-to-one session than I can do in a group. Hopefully you found this useful. Thumbs up if it was thought-provoking. Yeah, things that are in there that you know you can use. Yeah, because that's what I want. We've got to win that argument. And I know there's a lot of you right now, who've made a note going, transforming organization. Yes, that's what I'm doing. I'm helping my company become a transforming organization, and everything that goes with that. But I do think it's going to give you that mandate to escalate change into a more strategic function, and maybe improve those original poll results where actually we're reporting to a board member, or in fact, we are a board member ourselves. That's my ambition for as ever, all I think about is our profession. So that's my ambition. So happy to stay on and answer any questions. I'm just going to turn off the recording, but happy to have